What if a gang of bikers picked the wrong guy to mess with? Imagine being outnumbered, cornered, and laughed at, until you unleash a move that no one saw coming. Like the video and subscribe for more content like this. The sun hung low over the Tennessee highway, bleeding orange and purple into the sky. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin like a wet cloth. A lone figure walked along the shoulder of the road, his black backpack slung over one shoulder. Ethan Mercer kept his head down, focused on the long stretch of asphalt ahead. His car had broken down about 3 miles back, and with no cell service in this part of the countryside, his only option was to walk. He figured there had to be a gas station or a small town up ahead, somewhere he could find help. Then he heard it, the deep, growling rumble of engines behind him. He turned slightly, just enough to glance over his shoulder. 4 motorcycles thundered down the road, their headlights casting long, eerie shadows across the pavement. The riders wore dark leather vests, their arms tattooed, their faces shadowed by helmets. Ethan's stomach tensed. He had seen enough news reports to know that not all bikers were trouble, but some were. And something about the way these guys were riding in formation, slowing as they neared him, sent an uneasy chill down his spine. The lead rider, a burly man with a thick graying beard, pulled up alongside Ethan and smirked. "Long walk, buddy," he said, his voice rough like gravel. Ethan forced a polite nod. "Yeah, car broke down." Another biker, a lanky man with sunken eyes, chuckled. "That's so. Shame. Roads ain't too safe this time of night." Ethan felt the shift in the air. There was a mocking edge to their voices, an unspoken challenge. He kept walking. "I'll be fine. Just need to get to the next town." The lead biker cut his engine, and the others followed suit. The sudden silence almost more unsettling than the roar of their machines. The man swung his leg off his bike, planting his heavy boots on the pavement. "Thing is," he said, taking a slow step forward, "not everybody makes it to the next town." Ethan exhaled through his nose, his pulse quickening. He glanced toward the tree line, calculating the odds of making a run for it. Not good. A third biker, a stocky man with a scar across his cheek, grinned. "You ain't from around here, are ya?" Ethan shook his head. "Just passing through." The lead biker scratched his beard, studying him. "See, that's the problem. We don't much like strangers." The fourth biker, younger than the rest, let out a quiet laugh. Maybe he just needs a lesson. Ethan set his jaw. He had seen this play out before, bullies testing their prey. They didn't think he was a threat. That was their first mistake. Ethan inhaled slowly, forcing his body to stay relaxed. Tension only made people jumpy, especially men like these. If he acted afraid, they'd feed off it. If he acted too bold, they'd take it as a challenge. The lead biker stepped closer, his boots crunching against the gravel shoulder. "What you got in the bag, stranger?" Ethan tightened his grip on the strap. "Just some clothes. Not much else." "Let me see." The biker extended a hand, his fingers thick with calluses and grease. The others shifted behind him, circling slightly. Ethan shook his head. "I'd rather not." The lanky biker with sunken eyes snickered. "Think you got a choice?" Ethan's pulse ticked higher, but he kept his expression neutral. "Look, fellas, I don't want trouble. Just let me pass, and we all go home happy." The younger biker grinned. "Oh, you're gonna pass, all right?" He cracked his knuckles. "But maybe not on 2 legs." Ethan could feel the shift now. They weren't just trying to intimidate him anymore. They were setting up for something worse. A beating, a robbery, maybe both. The lead biker reached for Ethan's backpack. That was their second mistake. Ethan's right hand snapped up, lightning fast, grabbing the man's wrist. In the same breath, he twisted and yanked downward, using the biker's own momentum against him. A sharp, practiced movement. The man let out a strangled grunt as his arm was forced into an unnatural angle. Before the others could react, Ethan pivoted, planting his foot behind the biker's knee and shoving hard. The burly man dropped with a pained yell, his knee slamming into the pavement. A heartbeat later, Ethan released him and took 2 quick steps back. Silence. The other 3 bikers stared, their expressions shifting from amusement to something else. Confusion. Wariness. The lead biker groaned, cradling his arm as he struggled back to his feet. His face was red with rage. "What the hell was that?" Ethan didn't answer. He rolled his shoulders, shifting his stance just slightly. It was subtle, but the way he held himself, loose, balanced, ready, didn't go unnoticed. The scarred biker narrowed his eyes. "You some kind of fighter?" Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. He wasn't about to explain that he'd spent 6 years training in Krav Maga, a self-defense system designed for situations exactly like this. Training that taught him how to handle multiple attackers, how to end fights quickly, efficiently. He didn't need to explain. The bikers were already re-evaluating. The younger one took a hesitant step forward. "I don't care what tricks you got, boy." Ethan moved. Before the biker could finish his sentence, Ethan closed the distance and struck. Fast, precise. His elbow slammed into the man's sternum, knocking the wind from his lungs. The kid stumbled back, gasping, and just like that, the fight had changed. The young biker clutched his chest, staggering as he gasped for air. His eyes widened in shock as if his own body had betrayed him. The others took a step back, their confidence shaken. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The stranger wasn't cowering, wasn't pleading. He was standing there, calm, controlled, dangerous. The scarred biker was the first to recover. With a guttural growl, he lunged at Ethan, swinging a wild punch. Ethan dodged easily, slipping to the side. Before the biker could reset, Ethan struck. 2 rapid blows to the ribs, then a sharp hook to the jaw. The man's head snapped to the side and he stumbled back, eyes unfocused. The lanky biker cursed and reached into his vest. Ethan's instincts screamed at him. Weapon. He reacted before the man could pull anything. A quick, brutal front kick drove into the biker's gut, sending him sprawling backward with a choked gasp. His hands clawed at the air, whatever he'd been reaching for forgotten as he hit the ground hard. Ethan turned just in time to see the lead biker rushing him. This one was bigger, stronger. If he got his hands on Ethan, things could go south fast. Ethan didn't give him the chance. The moment the biker was close enough, Ethan pivoted and used the man's own momentum against him. A sharp redirection sent the biker stumbling past, off balance. Before he could recover, Ethan drove a punishing knee into his ribs. A pained roar burst from the man's lips as he collapsed onto one knee. He clutched his side, coughing. Ethan exhaled slowly, stepping back to assess. 3 bikers down, groaning on the pavement. The 4th, the younger one, had barely gotten back to his feet, still winded. Ethan turned his gaze on him. The young biker froze, uncertainty flickering across his face. His hands curled into fists, but he hesitated. He just watched Ethan dismantle his crew in seconds. Ethan didn't move. He didn't need to. The message was clear. The kid swallowed hard, then took a cautious step back. A beat of silence, then another. Engines rumbled to life, cutting through the thick Tennessee air. The bikers weren't laughing anymore. Their cocky grins had been replaced with bruised egos and aching ribs. The lead biker, still kneeling, let out a sharp exhale before pushing himself up. He met Ethan's gaze, rubbing his sore side. "Guess we misjudged you, stranger." Ethan didn't reply. He just stood there, his stance loose but ready. He wasn't foolish enough to assume the fight was over until they were gone. The scarred biker scowled, spitting blood onto the road. "Damn near broke my damn jaw." His eyes burned with resentment, but even he wasn't eager to go another round. The lanky biker shot Ethan a dark look but said nothing as he straddled his motorcycle. His fingers twitched, still itching for whatever he'd been reaching for earlier, a knife, a gun, something. But the beating he'd just taken had clearly made him rethink his decisions. Ethan finally spoke, his tone even. "I'd leave it in your pocket next time." The lanky man stiffened, his face twitching with anger, but the lead biker shot him a warning look. "Enough," the leader muttered. He exhaled and turned back to Ethan. "You got a name?" Ethan hesitated. He didn't owe them anything, not after what they tried to do. But a part of him, the part trained to manage situations like this, knew that refusing to answer could be seen as another challenge. So he gave them something. "Mercer," he said simply. The lead biker smirked. "Mercer. All right then." He swung a leg over his bike and settled into the seat. "We'll be seeing you." "Not if I see you first," Ethan replied. The older man let out a dry chuckle. With a final glance at his crew, he twisted the throttle. His bike roared as he peeled out, dust and gravel kicking up in his wake. One by one, the others followed, their taillights disappearing down the road. Ethan didn't move until the sound of their engines had faded into the distance. Only then did he let out a slow breath, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension. His muscles still thrummed with adrenaline, but the danger had passed. For now. He adjusted the strap on his backpack and turned back toward the road. His car was still miles behind him, and he still had no cell service. But at least now, he wouldn't have to worry about watching his back. The sun had dipped lower, staining the sky deep shades of red and purple. The highway stretched ahead, empty and quiet once more. Ethan started walking. One thing was certain. He wasn't the same stranded traveler they thought they could intimidate. And if they ever crossed paths again, they'd remember that. The lead biker, still kneeling, let out a bitter, wheezing laugh. He spat onto the pavement, shaking his head. Well, hell. He glanced up at Ethan, his expression a mix of frustration and something almost like respect. "You ain't just some stranded driver, are you?" Ethan said nothing. The scarred biker groaned, rubbing his jaw. "What the hell kind of training is that?" Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm. "The kind that makes sure I walk away." The young biker's hands trembled slightly as he looked between Ethan and his crew. His pride was still itching, but his body remembered the pain. He made the smart choice. Without another word, he turned, walked to his bike, and climbed on. One by one, the others followed. The road was silent again, but Ethan's senses remained sharp. He wasn't foolish enough to assume the bikers were gone for good. Guys like that didn't take humiliation lightly. He kept walking, his footsteps steady against the asphalt. The heat had begun to fade with the setting sun, but sweat still clung to his back. He needed to reach town before dark. 15 minutes later, he spotted something up ahead. A gas station. Relief flickered through him, but he didn't let his guard down just yet. He scanned the parking lot, only 2 cars, a rusted pickup and a sedan, both empty. A dim neon sign buzzed in the window. Open. Ethan pushed open the glass door, stepping inside. The cool air from an overworked AC unit hit him immediately, along with the scent of motor oil and stale coffee. Behind the counter stood an older man in his mid-60s wearing a faded baseball cap. His name tag read Harold. Harold eyed him warily. "Need something?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, got a phone I can use. My car broke down a few miles back." Harold grunted, scratching his chin. "Phone's busted. Storm last week knocked out the landline and cell service is spotty round here." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Figures? Closest mechanic?" "About 7 miles up the road, in Hollow Creek." 7 miles. That was another 2-hour walk, at best. Harold must have seen something in Ethan's face because he frowned. "You all right, son? You look like you had yourself a rough time." Ethan debated for half a second before deciding on the truth, at least part of it. "Ran into some bikers. They weren't too friendly." Harold's eyes darkened slightly. "You mean the vultures?" Ethan shrugged. "Didn't catch a name." Harold huffed. "Sounds like 'em. Bunch of lowlifes. They don't usually bother locals, but strangers?" He shook his head. "Yeah, they like to throw their weight around." Ethan leaned on the counter. They ever come back for round two? Harold gave him a knowing look. If they think you made 'em look bad? Yeah. Ethan wasn't surprised. He'd embarrassed them, and men like that didn't take humiliation lightly. They might let it go, or they might try to reclaim their pride. Harold sighed and reached under the counter, pulling out a set of truck keys. Tell you what, I got an old tow truck out back. She ain't fast, but she'll get you to Hollow Creek. Ethan's eyebrows lifted. You trust a stranger with your truck? Harold smirked. Son, I seen plenty of guys come through here. The ones who need watching ain't the ones asking to use a phone. Ethan nodded, appreciating the gesture. He took the keys. I'll bring it back. See that you do. Ethan turned to leave, but just before he reached the door, he caught something in the reflection of the glass. A row of headlights in the distance. The bikers were coming back. Ethan didn't hesitate. He turned back toward Harold, tossing the truck keys in his palm. Got a back door? He asked, his voice calm but urgent. Harold's eyes flicked toward the approaching headlights, then back to Ethan. He didn't ask questions. Through the storage room, out past the dumpster. Ethan gave a sharp nod and moved. He slipped behind the counter, pushing through a narrow door marked Employees Only. Inside, shelves stacked with motor oil and dusty boxes formed a cramped passageway. At the back, a steel door led outside. He pressed a hand against it, listening. The engines rumbled closer. Harold, still behind the counter, casually grabbed a rag and started wiping down the register just as the gas station door swung open. The lead biker stepped in first, his movement slow and deliberate. His bruised ribs must have still been screaming from earlier, but his face gave nothing away. The others followed, scarred jaw, lanky frame, and the young one who still clutched his chest from the elbow strike Ethan had given him. Harold barely looked up. Something I can help y'all with? The lead biker smirked. Yeah, looking for someone. Harold tossed the rag onto the counter. That's so. The biker stepped closer. Young guy, dark hair, about yay tall. He held a hand up. Passed through here? Harold met his gaze without flinching. Ain't seen nobody. The scarred biker let out a scoff. Try again, old man. Harold sighed, leaning on the counter. Now, see, I don't much like your tone. His eyes flicked toward the younger biker who was still rubbing his ribs. From the looks of it, I'd say whoever you're hunting already taught you a lesson. The lead biker's jaw tensed. He got lucky. Harold smirked. That what you tell yourself? The younger biker took a step forward, anger burning in his eyes. Listen, old... Enough. The lead biker's voice cut through the room like a knife. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Man's covering for him. Doesn't matter. We'll find him. He turned and walked back toward the door. The others followed, but not before the lanky biker sent Harold a glare. Shouldn't stick your neck out for strangers. Harold didn't flinch. You should pick your fights better. The door slammed shut behind them. Ethan waited a few seconds, then cracked open the storage room door, stepping back into the main shop. Harold grinned. They ain't too bright, are they? Ethan exhaled. I need to go. Now. Harold nodded. Take the truck. Stay off the main roads. Ethan took the keys. Appreciate it. Harold's smirk faded. They'll come looking for you again. Ethan met his gaze, eyes steady. Let 'em. Without another word, he slipped outside, climbed into the truck, and fired up the engine. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. Ethan gripped the wheel, rolling the truck slowly out of the gas station lot. He kept the headlights dim, not wanting to draw attention. The biker's taillights were still visible in the distance, but they hadn't turned around, yet. He needed to move fast. Harold's tow truck rumbled onto the highway, its old engine growling in protest. It wasn't built for speed, but Ethan didn't need speed. He needed distance. He took a sharp right onto a side road, a narrow strip of asphalt winding through dense trees. A safer route, less visibility. He drove in silence, his senses on high alert. Every shadow, every flicker of light in the rearview mirror sent a pulse of tension through him. The bikers weren't the type to let things go. If they found him again, it wouldn't just be fists this time. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The road opened up ahead, leading into Hollow Creek. Small houses and closed storefronts lined the quiet main street. A mechanic's garage sat at the far end, its sign flickering weakly in the night. Ethan pulled in. An old man in greasy overalls stepped out from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He squinted at the truck, then at Ethan. "Harold send you?" Ethan nodded. "Car broke down outside town. Need a tow." The mechanic grunted. "Keys." Ethan handed them over. "It's about 7 miles up the highway." The old man nodded, tossing the rag over his shoulder. "I'll head out in the morning. You need a place to stay?" Ethan hesitated. The smart move was to keep going, put more distance between himself and the bikers. But his body ached from the fight, and exhaustion was creeping in. "Yeah," he finally said. "That'd be good." The mechanic gestured toward a small trailer behind the shop. "Ain't much, but it's got a bed." Ethan thanked him and made his way inside. The trailer smelled like dust and motor oil, but it was quiet, safe. He locked the door behind him, set his bag down, and sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing a hand over his face. His mind replayed the fight, every move, every strike. He'd walked away tonight, but it wasn't over. Men like the vultures didn't forget. A part of him almost welcomed it. Let them come. He wasn't just some stranded traveler. He wasn't easy prey. And the next time they tried, he'd make sure they regretted it. The vultures thought they had an easy target, until they learned the hard way that not every lone traveler is helpless. This story is a reminder that underestimating the wrong person can have serious consequences. Always think twice before picking a fight you can't win. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notification to be the first to know when the next story drops.